Imagine, just for a moment, how utterly bizarre it must have been to be a Victorian, back when London was the biggest city in the world and names like Dickens, Darwin, Babbage, Edison, Mary Curie and Alexander Graham Bell were all at the peak of their powers, propelling forwards an age of discovery so transformative that dozens of world-changing advancements happened within the space of a single lifetime. Among them were the telephone, radio, bicycles, Morse code, sewing machines, concrete, ice cream, postage stamps, Christmas cards, flushing toilets, steel, trams, modern railways, the underground, the typewriter, the motor car, and pasteurisation. All good stuff. But at the same time, some inventions and discoveries went a step further, those which created an air of mysticism and seemed to push the boundaries of reality. The phonograph and its immediate descendant, the gramophone, captured human voices and held them to be replayed over and over, apparently bottling a moment in time. Portable cameras and the facsimile machine did the same with images, freezing pictures in space. Before these inventions, every sound and sight happened in real time. If you missed them, they were gone forever, except in written testimony or perhaps a dramatic painting. Now they could be recorded accurately and permanently. X-rays allowed people to peer inside the human body and observe bones and organs without harming the subject of the examination. Meanwhile, harnessing electricity to produce light and heat tamed an invisible force capable of powering machines and breathing life into objects that you thought were inanimate. For the average person on the street, witnessing any of this for the first time must have been quite unnerving. But there was something else muddying the waters. Although genuine miracles were taking place across the Victorian world, so were popular hoaxes, fakes and scientific untruths, making it tricky to separate fact from fiction. If you believed it was possible to create light without a flame or hear a voice that spoke yesterday, then you might entertain the possibility of other outlandish things. Why not levitation? Why not telepathy? Nothing was off the table. Thanks to pseudoscience, it wasn't completely clear that you couldn't tell whether someone might commit a murder by the shape of their head. Charles Dickens was fascinated by ghostly testimony, while Arthur Conan Doyle literally believed in fairies and attended seances. They weren't alone. It was a time when truth and fantasy waltzed as equals, with even the greatest minds not entirely sure where to draw the dividing line between science fact and science fiction. Animal magnetism. What weirder time then to introduce to the world a technique that could place people in trances and take over their minds? The school of mesmerism, an ancestor of what today we call hypnosis, claimed to do exactly that. And by the mid-19th century, it was so popular that practitioners sold out theatres, earned fame and fortune, and filled newspaper columns, while the scientific community ummed and erred about what was really going on. It all began with a German physician called Franz Mesmer, who, in 1778, moved to Paris and introduced a new treatment capable of combating almost any condition, from headaches to hysteria. He said a fluid called animal magnetism connected all living beings and governed their health. Disease happened when the free flow of this substance was interrupted, but its normal flow could be restored, using magnets to move a swallowed preparation containing iron filings around the body to get rid of the blockage. Mesmer soon ditched the iron when he found that he could generate the same effect using just his hands and a few props, principally a bath of magnetized water to which the affected parts of patients were connected via ropes and rods. During treatment, soothing music wafted through the air as Mesmer toured the room, talking softly and touching patients, often intimately in the case of the women. Results were mixed, but what did happen was that many patients fell into a state Mesmer described as crisis, involving convulsions, uncontrollable laughter, tears, coughing fits and hiccups. An investigation into the practice, commissioned by a highly suspicious Louis XVI of France and carried out by some of the era's brightest minds, including Benjamin Franklin, then a US ambassador, found that a state of crisis cannot be created unless patients were made aware of what was happening to them. It was the setup. The props were placebos. The highly charged environment and actions of Mesmer himself, not animal magnetism, was bringing about the effect. This discovery led to the notion of the power of suggestion, as well as the placebo effect, both well anchored in modern-day science. And while Mesmer himself was debunked, mesmerising sessions grew in popularity, unimpeded by their decoupling from bodily health. Mesmerism became a spectator sport, and events began to draw ever greater gatherings of spectators from increasingly diverse backgrounds. What started as a programme of experiments for the middle and upper classes began to take on far broader appeal, particularly as mesmerism was adopted by an ever greater number of practitioners. In 1831, the Belgian polymath Marcelin Jobard introduced the concept of mesmerism to Charles Lafontaine, who picked it up and ran with it, studying the works of fellow magnetisers Joseph Deleuze and the Marquis de Persegur, and toured Europe equipped with all the nonsense he'd learned. Then, in 1841, 4 years into Queen Victoria's reign, Lafontaine's performances caught the eye of the eminently more sensible James Braid, a sceptic who read widely on the subject and was convinced that something fishy was going on. Probably articles like the one published in the London Medical Gazette in 1838, which asserted, "Where the mind has been alone acted on, magnetic effects have been produced without magnetic manipulations. Where magnetic manipulations have been employed, unknown, and therefore without the assistance of the mind, no result has ever been produced. It went on to ask, why then imagine a new agent which cannot act by itself and which has never yet even seemed to produce a new phenomenon? Cashing in. Following a couple more of Lafontaine's performances, Braid was convinced that a phenomenon was occurring. Not animal magnetism, but not nothing either. Studying the techniques employed, he concluded that the effect was produced by a combination of physical contact, mesmeric passes, and eye fixation. And that the state he later minted neurohypnology, and then the catchier hypnosis, was in fact possible without physical contact, meaning that whatever was happening existed entirely inside people's heads. Braid went on to develop a system of treatments and therapeutics, the like of which is still used today to help people overcome addictions and phobias, pain management and the after effects of trauma, even to alleviate the symptoms of some diseases, to name a few examples. But where's the fun in that? While Braid was busy making practical advances in the science of hypnosis, others were making some serious dollar. Victorians were fascinated by the unexplained, and mesmerism was the ideal outlet for the curious. Moreover, the strict societal norms of the time discouraged open expressions of emotion. Mesmerism helped people explore altered states of consciousness and hidden desires. Mesmerising sessions became a staple of Victorian theatre, and a leading form of entertainment to rival musical plays and vaudeville. While names like Jules Denis, John Elliotson and James Esdaile, as well as Braid, explored the medical scope of mesmerism, stage hypnotists like Charles Lafontaine and Carl Hansen, better known by his stage name as Hansen the Magnetist, toured Europe wowing audiences with quasi-scientific theatre. Volunteers from the audience would reenact historical events and act out comical routines under the spell of the mesmerist. Hansen would reduce his subjects to a state of perfect rigidity, impervious to sensation, convince them that the brilliance of noonday sun is midnight darkness, and make them believe the floor was a running stream in which they would dutifully try to swim. They would eat raw potatoes, believing them to be ripe pears, and hear claps of thunder where there were none. His abilities were impressive, so much so that after a young Viennese medical student named Sigmund Freud attended one of Hansen's performances, hypnosis soon formed the major part of Freud's early career, as he developed the theories and techniques that would ultimately earn him the title the father of psychoanalysis. What is actually happening? Incredibly, what exactly takes place when someone is hypnotized is still debated to this day, with theories abounding about the influence of neuropsychological susceptibility, social role-taking, cognitive behavioral bias, and conditioned reflex response, all of which give clues as to why some people are harder to hypnotize than others. While hypnotherapy remains a popular treatment around the world, interest in its awkward relative stage hypnosis has waned over the years, not helped by whistleblowers including George Krisky, a former practitioner of stage hypnotism, who at 88 spent the latter part of his career debunking the notion of hypnotic trance. We now know that the power of suggestion in the hands of skilled performers is all it takes to put on a good mesmeric show. But for the Victorians, hypnosis was a mystical force that left people spellbound, just like all the others. Its mix of truth and lie, wild fantasy and practical therapy, of show business and stone-cold cure, made it the perfect addition to the tapestry of new and exciting things that grew up during the Victorian era. What a time to be alive. That's everything. If you enjoyed that story, then mash that like button, subscribe and turn on notifications for more exciting short documentaries. And if Victorian mysteries are your thing, check out my videos on the era's first monster and the panic inspired by mysterious footprints that appeared one snowy night. Most importantly, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.